What's your "actually I am the manager" story? Story 1. Pissed off customer asked for the store manager's card and when he'll be in so that he can complain about me for charging him a restocking fee as per policy. I hand him the manager's card and tell him that he will be able to speak with him the following day. I am the manager. He called, I answered, he hung up. Story 2. I was the manager at an EB Games back in the day. This was probably about 2000 or 2001. I was there for the launch of the PS2 and Diablo 2, which were the two biggest events that I can remember. We had an older lady come in one day who wanted to return a system she had bought for her son. She claimed he had gotten bad grades in school and was returning it as punishment. She handed me this ridiculously old, beat-up cardboard box, to which I opened and found a dirty, dusty, Cheeto fingerprint-covered PS1. I knew that the original PlayStation launched in 1994, so what I was looking at in the box was at least 6 years old. I paused, looked back at her, and for whatever reason, asked if she had the receipt, which she actually did. Sure enough, it had the date printed on it, and it was from sometime in 94. I still hadn't said anything more. I was just looking at the mess in front of me when she spoke up and said something along the lines of, "And I'll just take the cash back, that'll be fine." I laughed, which was probably my first mistake, and said, "I'm sorry, but I don't think I'll be able to return this. This is 6 years old and clearly very used." She tried to argue that she had bought it here at this very store, and the manager at the time told her that she could return it for any reason. And then she went on this crazy diatribe about her kid being bad, etc., etc. It went on for a good 5 to 10 minutes. When she was done, I just flipped the receipt over to her and read the EB return policy. 30 days from the date of purchase for unopened merchandise. She completely lost it. It escalated so quickly I contemplated calling mall security and the police. She wasn't having it. Then I told her she could sell the system back to us, which was worth about $40 at the time, and then that would have at least given her something, but she wasn't biting on that one either. She asked for the manager, demanded to see the manager, and wouldn't rest until she told the manager how rude I had been, even though I'd been pretty much a saint for most of this. And then she of course threatened to get me fired. I just pointed to my name tag, and in the most satisfied tone humanly possible, said, "Lady, I am the manager, and there's no way on God's green earth that I'm returning an opened 6-year-old, clearly used, dirty PlayStation 1. Story 3. Not me, I'm just an employed trucker, but I've picked up a couple from other truck drivers shooting the breeze at restaurants. All 3 of these guys were owner-operators that also owned their own trailers, so they ran fully solo and just picked loads from a board instead of hauling company trailers and going where dispatch asked. The first guy's story takes place after he just got loaded up and the fork truck driver hands him the load paperwork. He demands a lumber fee for the loading. The driver says no. The contract the load broker signed clearly states that the broker pays all loading and unloading fees. So they call them about it. Well, they call, and the broker starts humming and hawing about it with the shipper, holding the driver for ransom basically. Driver gets fed up and tells the broker he's bailing on this load since they've wasted multiple hours of his time, and also breached the contract they signed with him. He tells the shipper to unload him so that he can just leave. The shipper lady gets combative and threatens to call his company. He says, "Alright then, go ahead." She calls and his cell phone rings. He answers and shouts, "My truck, my trailer, get your shit out of it." The second guy runs refrigerated freight. He gets a load from a broker, they sign the contract he sends them without any fuss, and the load is ice cream this time. In the contract he sent, it clearly states, and I'm paraphrasing here, "I don't like to sit and wait for loading and unloading. If the shipper or receiver takes longer than 2 hours, you, the broker, pay me $500 an hour, within 24 hours, including the first 2 hours of waiting." So when the shipper was taking an hour and a half to load the 2 pallets, he started getting antsy about sitting so long and goes in to check on why they're so slow. And the place is empty. He goes around the front of the building and knocks on a window there with someone working inside. They tell him, "Oh yeah, shipping's left for the night. They'll finish loading you in the morning." This doesn't fly with him, so he calls the broker and reminds him of his contract terms. "It's been 2 hours now. If there's not a check deposited to my account within the next hour for $1,500 and this shipper gets their fork truck guy back out here and finishes loading now, I'm bailing." Broker says there's no chance they'll pay him anything at all for the wait. Contract be damned. So he pulls away from the dock, shoves out the 2 pallets of ice cream, and leaves. The shipper later sues the broker for lost product and delaying that load. Broker sues the driver countersues for breach of contract and failure to pay plus all legal costs, and he won. Broker paid out the nose because they didn't read the contract. The third guy hauls heavy equipment. On one load, he got a bulldozer that needed to go somewhere in New York City back in the 80s. He had a police escort once he's off the highway and into the city. Gets to about a block from the destination and can't make a turn. Right angle, right-hand turn with cars parked on both sides. The cop surveys the situation for a few minutes, sighs, and asks, "How sturdy is your truck?" This guy's truck is triple framed with a solid steel front bumper. Won't even ring if you kick it. Cop says, "See those cars parked on the red paint? That's a fire lane. There's no parking. Push them out of the way." So that's exactly what he did. Pushed them aside with his truck, and the one nearest to the corner got gouged by the bulldozer blade hanging off the side of the trailer. Cop was writing tickets and leaving them on the windshields the entire time. Story 4. I ran an ice cream shop, and I must have had to say, "Actually, I am the manager," at least once a week. My favorite was this woman I eventually banned from the shop. She would come in with her husband and her horrible little children. Then she would try to order a large, 3 scoops, and ask me to put it in 3 single scoop cups, but only charge for the single large. I said no. You either order 3 single scoops, or you order a large. The difference in cost is quite a bit, but it's fairly standard for companies to do it this way. I wasn't having it. She got all pissy and said, "Well, the manager let me do it last week." "No, I didn't," I told her flatly. "Well, then whoever was working let me do it, and they said they were the manager." "No, they didn't. I believe my work is over you." "Well, I want to talk to the manager." "Lady, I am the manager, and you are talking to me." I said no. "Fine." Then she and her little family stormed out without any ice cream. No skin off my back. She was rude to me and my workers. I wasn't going to let her treat us that way. Then she proceeded to call the shop the next day, when I'm working again, as the manager. I worked a lot. And she says, "Hello, I need to speak to the manager." "Speaking, how can I help you?" "I was in there yesterday, and some little bitch lied and said that she was the manager, but she wouldn't let me get what I wanted." "Ah, yeah, that bitch was me. You're banned from this location. Don't come back." Bonus justice, she tried to call corporate on me. Corporate outsources complaints to the manager with the highest rating in the area, which was me. So when she called corporate to complain about me, she also got me. I wrote up the details of our conversation and forwarded all of her messages to the district manager, and he agreed with my decision and allowed me to send her an official email banning her from our store. Story 5. I used to work in the box office for an MLB team. The actual manager was usually extremely busy and couldn't easily respond to issues at 15 different windows, so we frequently just pretended to be each other's managers. It was the easiest way to get backup when an annoying customer would not accept one of our policies. One night, I was helping a very drunk customer who refused to accept a policy. I don't remember which one exactly, but either way, he asked to speak to the manager, but he and everyone else around me were crazy busy. So I turned my back to the customer, turned back around, pretended to be a different person, and backed myself up. He accepted this without any issue, and went on his way. Story 6. Worked in retail, specifically a specialist bra fitting shop. One day I was working the change room desk upstairs, taking bookings for fittings and helping the 10 or so customers in the rooms for people who didn't need a fit, but needed me to just quickly check things sometimes and fetch different sizes, etc. It was busy, and a woman came in on lunch rush and demanded a fitting. I politely told her that I was very sorry, but all the fitters were booked with other customers for the next hour or so I could help her a bit, but I'm unable to give her one-to-one attention, as I'm helping all the other rooms too. So if she wants the full thing, then she would need to pop back in tomorrow or at a later time today. She flew off the handle, telling me how busy and important she was, that she made a special trip and she can't come back tomorrow, so I should help her, etc., etc. She was really rude, aggressive, and just downright mean. So I politely repeated that I was very sorry, but that I couldn't help her for the reasons I'd stated previously. We just had no free staff. She ranted a while, but then eventually left. A few minutes after she went downstairs, I got a call from one of the till girls saying a customer was complaining about the young girl on the fitting desk who refused to help her even though she could see spaces on the list. She said that I'd been rude and that I'd been swearing at her and wanted to see the manager about me. It should be noted that I was 24 at the time, but looked really young, maybe 18-ish. She clearly had no idea that I was the manager, so I told the desk girl I'd be down shortly. I walked down those steps slowly with a huge shit-eating grin on my face to see this horrible woman slowly recognize who I was. When she saw it was me, her face was just a picture. I played along, asking for a description of this girl who was so rude to her, as that is very much outside our standards, and I'm shocked to hear that such a thing happened. I was upstairs at the time, and certainly would have intervened if I had heard such a thing. Just reveling in the experience of this woman tripping all over her words. She had caused such a scene that all the people in the shop were staring at us. So she either had to admit that she'd been lying and trying to get what she thought was some poor shop girl fired, or she had to make up a description with me obviously going to be saying things like, no one here looks anything like that. She was just at a loss for words, her mouth agape, gasping for air, bright red, not making eye contact. I forget if she said anything at all, but she stood there for a long while, and then just left. I have never felt such satisfaction as I did walking down those stairs, knowing what was about to happen. Story 7. So my story for this actually just happened the other day. Old man comes in the pizzeria I manage. Doesn't say a thing to me, just hands me a piece of paper with numbers on it. We have a rewards program, and I assumed it was his code for a free pizza. So the first thing I said was, "Oh, is this your code for the VIP pizza?" And he says, "Yeah, but I want a sub with chips and a drink." And I said, "Sir, this code is only for a large pizza with 2 toppings." And he starts to throw a little geriatric bit fit. And of course, I stand my ground because screw this guy. So he starts looking behind the counter as if to get my manager's attention, and I quickly redirect him to me, saying, "And I'm the manager, so you can talk to me if you have a problem." And he basically demanded his free sub, which I wouldn't give to him because, 1, as far as I knew, this code was only for a free pizza, and 2, he was being a rude, whiny little throwaway of a person. And I'm not going out of my way for him. Sure, I could give it to him for free, but how are you that old and still don't understand courtesy and manners? He ended up taking the free pizza. Damn right. How some people get to old age in life without experiencing consequences for their bad behavior absolutely escapes me. Story 8. I was working at a chain bookstore in the same town that the CEO lived in, and he would frequently come into our store and get things. One day we had a customer blow up at me over a return, and that an exception should be made because he knows the CEO really well. We go way back. Not the first time I've heard similar things. It also didn't help that he got the CEO's first name wrong. I wish I could have some sort of memento from this, but the CEO was in the store that day, and in that very line for the registers that the annoying customer was holding up, with his demands to return something that he didn't even buy from us. I knew the customer was full of crap, since they used the wrong name and ignored their good friend in line, so it was nice to ask why he didn't say anything to his pal. It was equally nice when the CEO came up to us at the registers to ask if we needed any help. And it was nice to have 2 more store managers stand there confirming that he was talking to the CEO and was caught right in his lie of pretending to know the CEO to demand a return. Story 9. I was an auto parts store manager. In the retail setting, you don't see too many female employees, and when some customers come in, they want to talk to the male employees only. In this case, I was working with another employee, a female manager, when a guy came in and started asking her questions. He clearly knew very little about what he was asking, as our female manager was answering all of his questions, but this guy just didn't like or didn't believe the answers coming from her. I was in back just around the corner, but listening to the whole conversation. The guy said she clearly couldn't help him, and he needed to talk to a man. I came out from around the corner about this time, and the customer came down to the register where I was standing. He started asking me the same questions about parts, and I told him, that is a good question. Let me ask our expert. And I called over our female manager. Customer got all huffy and said that we were running a 2-bit store and that we didn't know anything. He told us he'd be visiting our competitor instead and left. That coming from the guy asking the questions, not giving the answers. I really don't like those kinds of people. Yep, sounds like misogyny at its finest. Jeez. Story 10. I managed a grocery store in high school. It was a small place with 2 registers up front and a third one that the manager had over at the service counter in back. There was a number of times where I'd be covering a register for someone's break and get an unruly customer who demanded a manager. I'd tell them that I'd call the manager over to the counter for them. I'd walk right over with them, open the locked door to the service desk, and come around to the counter with a big old grin and ask, "How can I help you today?" Story 11. I had a guy shove me and get in my face in a bar and tell me that I better call security before he kicked my ass. Unzipped my jacket to reveal a logo with the name of the bar we were in. Promptly barreled him out of the front door and said, "Okay, I got him." He spent the next 20 minutes begging me to let him back inside. Story 12. Worked at a repair shop in my early 20s. The old farts never gave me respect. They came in, I'd greet them, and they would immediately go to one of the older guys behind the counter to ask basic questions that I could easily answer. Well, one of the other older guys behind the counter was busy, and a new hire, and I had seniority, though not the manager. They asked about the price for a brake line repair. I told him that I would have to inspect the vehicle first so I can give him an accurate estimate, but he insisted on a rough estimate. So I gave it to him, and he shook his head no and laughed, looking at the older new hire behind the counter. I told him, he can't help you, this is the average price. Could be more, could be less. The other old guy told him that I was right, and he left. Still leaves a bitter taste in my mouth when old farts judge me based on my age, thinking that I don't know anything. Story 13. This is kind of the opposite, but a good story all the same. I work for a large mechanical contractor, and the owner is obscenely rich, like more than 10 Ferraris, multiple Lambos, car obsessed. Having bought a few 6-digit Ferraris in his life, he became close friends with the owner of the dealership. One day, he went to the dealership straight from work to see his friend, and while he was waiting, he was looking at some of the cars. Like I said, straight from work, so he was pretty filthy and looked like his salary was probably lower than the price of the car he was looking at. A sales associate saw him and politely pointed out that there was no way he could afford the car. My boss calmly looked him up and down and said, "I'm waiting for your boss. Get me a f***ing coffee." 20 minutes later, my boss drove away with the exact same Ferrari he was told he couldn't afford, and the sales associate was told to pack his stuff and leave by the end of the day. So that's it for today, guys. Don't forget to leave your story in the comments below. I'd love to do a video on them in the future. And if you enjoyed this video, you might like these ones here on screen. I'm ReddList. I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and I will see you next time.